So in my last video, I talked a little bit about how I made it into all the PT schools I applied to except for one, and that was my top school. So I want to tell you guys a little bit today about why I didn't get into that school and how that really affected me and changed the trajectory that I'm on today. So like I mentioned in my last video, I was going to school on the East Coast in Virginia, and my wife was going to college in Phoenix at the time. And when I graduated school, we originally were thinking of maybe going back to Oregon, where both of our parents live, to maybe go to school there and maybe start working there. But we decided not to go that route for a few reasons. One was I couldn't get any physical therapy hours up in Oregon due to the COVID restrictions at the time. And then another reason was we wanted a little bit of maybe independence from my parents for a little bit, just because we were newly married. We were like, hey, maybe we should go further away and just kind of focus on the two of us for a while, kind of alone in a new city. And so we ended up deciding to move to Phoenix. And my thought was at the time, in terms of applying to PT schools, is I really wanted to get into Northern Arizona University. And they have two campuses, one in Flagstaff and one in Phoenix. And they're a state school, so I could get in-state residency. So the tuition would go from like 115,000 or so down to like 50,000 or 55,000 a year. And that's pretty affordable compared to most PT schools, at least for private schools, right? So I was really intrigued about getting maybe that in-state tuition and just staying in Phoenix. And we really enjoyed it. So I moved down to Phoenix. I had my job there as a physical therapy technician, and I started working for a full year, accruing my hours, and then I didn't get into any schools. I did get an interview to one school, however, and that was NAU. I got into they had two stages of interviews. The first was an online Zoom interview, more in a group setting, and then they would have more individualized interviews later on in person. And I didn't make it past the group stage. However, it did give me a glimmer of hope that, hey, like maybe I align with NAU a little bit, and I just need to get more hours and a little bit more experience. So I went back, did a whole another year of work. I was casting my net a little bit wider the second time around, though. Or I guess technically my third time applying out of college. And so the second time I applied, I only applied to 4 schools, and 3 of those were in Arizona. This time I applied a bit broader. I applied back up in Oregon to be near family. I applied to Rocky Mountain University in Utah, in Nevada, Regis in Colorado, and then NAU and Midwestern in Phoenix. So I had a good blend of schools that I was applying to. And so I was hopeful, like this next time around, that I could get into the program, because at this point I was in the state for almost 2 years, so I was really hoping to get that in-state tuition. So we had really committed to like being in Phoenix in order to get that tuition, and I even started changing my residency to be for Arizona. I paid to get an Arizona license plate for my car, and that was like $700. But I was like, all right, like I'm all committed, all in on Arizona, because I already had the interview the last time around. So I was like, there's no way that I wouldn't get further in that process with NAU, especially when I started getting interviews and getting accepted to schools. I got into Midwestern right off the bat in September. The interview went really well. I got some good experience doing the interview process, and I made it in. And I was really excited. And I was like, oh, I got the ball rolling. Then I got into Rocky Mountain University, and I was even more excited. But at the same time, I was a bit nervous because NAU was already handing out interview offers, and I knew that the timeline had begun, but I hadn't got an offer yet. So I was hoping that I would just be in a later round of interviews. But then time kept going. I got offers for other schools and offers for interviews, and NAU was silent. And then eventually I believe it was in December, I got the notification that I wasn't getting extended an interview offer for NAU. And I was honestly pretty shocked, because even the year before, I got an interview offer, at least from them, to go to the first round of interviews. But this time around, even though I was more confident in my abilities in my interview process and with the amount of hours I had, I ended up not even getting an interview invitation to NAU. And out of all 7 schools I applied to, that's the only school where I didn't even get an interview offer. And I was pretty shocked. I was definitely pretty disappointed, because I was hoping to get that in-state tuition. I'd done a tour of the Phoenix campus, done the open house there, and I really enjoyed the campus, and I really liked the school, and I thought it'd be a good fit for me, and I ended up not making it in. And so then I was trying to figure out, okay, well, do we stay in Phoenix and go for a whole another year cycle and try to get into NIU still, or do I just take the offer from Midwestern? It was okay. I didn't like it as much, and it was a lot more expensive. It was one of the more expensive programs I'd gotten into. And I was kind of feeling that pressure because the deadline for Midwestern was coming up. They already wanted to know, I think, in November. And so I ended up declining to go to Midwestern and ended up declining to go to Rocky Mountain because those offers were already jumping off quickly for how long you could hold on to your deposit. And so then I actually ended up deciding to go to George Fox. And it wasn't my original plan. It wasn't originally my top choice. It was like my top three. But it slowly started moving up, especially when I realized I wasn't getting an offer from NAU. I went to George Fox. I did my interview there, and actually really loved the open house. And their staff was actually one of the most like friendly and open faculty I'd met out of all the schools. And it really seemed like doors were opening for us to go back to Oregon and to kind of go back near family again. And so ultimately, I ended up settling to go back to George Fox. But it was a bit of a crazy process because we moved all the way to Phoenix with the idea that I was going to go to NAU. That was like kind of like my top school. That was my goal. That's why we stayed in Phoenix another year after I didn't get into NAU the first time. And then out of all the schools I applied to, that was the only one where I didn't get an interview. And so we really had to pivot. But honestly, looking back, I don't regret what I did. I'm not sad anymore that I didn't get into NAU. I'm actually really happy at George Fox. I have a really strong cohort, good friends, and it's nice to be back by family again. And so I think ultimately this ended up being the right choice for me. So just for you guys to think about when you're applying to schools, like even if you don't get into your top choice, sometimes it actually ends up working out pretty good, even if you have to go to your second or third option. So let me know if this video helped you guys in terms of making your decisions to get into PT schools. And I wish you good luck on your journeys. Comment down below about how your journey into PT school is going.